Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I want to give you 3 tips for recording with virtual guitar amplifiers. We're going to be looking at virtual guitar amplifiers today, but before we dive in, if you're ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety, and you really want to start honing your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF that will walk you through the entire mixing process, step by step, to help you get professional, radio-ready mixes without any more of the guesswork and without any more of the hassle. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and take a look at these guitars. Just to give you an idea of what we're going for here and what can be achieved with virtual guitar amplifiers, let me play you this pair of guitars here. This is the rhythm guitars in this track. It's a cover song. Let me play you what these sound like, excuse me, by themselves here. And then we're going to go to the actual DI track, and I'm going to show you how we work with a virtual amplifier here, which is what we use a lot here at the studio. You can see we've got a couple amplifiers here in the room, but a lot of the times these days we do opt for virtual guitar amplifiers, because then we can have the sound coming through the speakers here in the room. No need to put on headphones and stuff like that. But let me play you the pair of guitars here, just the rhythm guitars here. So these are the raw recorded guitars after being run through the virtual amplifiers. What we're going to do here is we're going to switch to the actual DI track. Excuse me, I just drank too much water before turning on the camera. Here's the actual DI track. This is what we're going to work with today. We're going to go over 3 tips for using virtual guitar amplifiers, recording guitars DI like this. So let me play you just the raw DI track that we have on the way in here. So not horrible sounding, but not great sounding, right? It's very clearly just digital DI right into the DAW here. Not a great guitar tone, but it's workable, right? That's why we use virtual guitar amplifiers, because we can work with a DI tone like this. Tip number 1 when working with virtual guitar amplifiers is you still want to get a good level on the way in. If we zoom out, you can see the difference here between our raw track, our DI tone, and our finished tone here. So what we want to do is we want to take our raw DI tone here and get it up to a good level. We can either come over here to the inspector window and pull up the gain here. We can use our clip gain right here to pull up our gain, or I have a shortcut created where I just tap the plus button and it'll boost up my volume by 3 dB. That's looking a little bit healthier. Let's go one more here. Take a listen now. Just by boosting the volume up, we already have a stronger guitar tone before we hit the amplifier. That's what you want to start with. The lower the volume, the less of the amplifier vibe you're going to get on the way in, because it's the same way as pushing into an actual amplifier, right? The harder you push the input, the more tone, the more vibe you get from the amplifier. So same way we're working here inside the DAW with virtual amplifiers. Now that we have our level set, now we can pull up our actual virtual amplifier plugin here. We are working with Neural DSP's archetype Nolly. So this is one of the plugins created with Neural DSP by Adam Nolly, Adam Get Good Nolly from Periphery, from Get Good Drums, a variety of companies. This is the amplifier we actually use a lot here on guitars. It's a great virtual amplifier. We always get great tones out of it. Let me just pull it up. Here's just the default settings that it opens up at, and we'll take a listen to what our guitar sounds like now. So let's get our tone sculpted here, and then we're going to talk about our second tip here with our actual amplifier. I think I'm going to switch to this different cab here. You can either link the cab in the actual head, or you can use whatever cab and whatever head you want here. You can also turn off the cabs and pull in cab IRs if you want. I think we're going to use the second one here. We're going to tweak just the settings here a little bit and get a better tone here on our actual amp. So here's tip number 2 when you're working with virtual guitar amplifiers. For me, it's always beneficial to pull down the bass. Something about going DI into your DAW and using a virtual amplifier makes the low end on your guitar sound fake. It sounds digital. It sounds manufactured. It sounds way different than miking up a cab in your room, even if you have the exact same settings on your IR that you're using on the cab in the actual room. It always sounds different coming in a DAW, using a DI, and using a virtual amplifier. The low end is probably the hardest thing to get right in digital. It's the same way when you plug an acoustic guitar in DI, that DI'd acoustic has that fake sounding low end on it. So for me, it's the same thing here using a virtual amplifier. I always like to pull down the bass a little bit just to make it feel a little bit more natural, a little bit more clean sounding. So I'll put this back up and then we'll go back to where it is. You can hear the difference before and after with this bass move here. It's not a huge difference. It doesn't make or break the guitar tone. We could always throw on a high pass filter afterwards, right, and roll off that excess low end, but it's enough here on the amp that it helps it feel more real and you get more vibe from the amp rather than all that muddy low end that you're getting from that excess bass, that kind of fake digital sounding low end that you get from virtual amplifiers using them inside the DAW with a DI track. We're going to finish sculpting the tone here, and we're going to move on to tip number 3. But a little bit of review. Tip number 1 is you still want to set a healthy level going into your guitar or your virtual guitar amplifier. So we took our actual DI signal here, which is this audio here, and boosted it up to a healthy level going into the guitar amp. So if we look here on the actual fader, on the actual meter here, you can see where our DI signal is sitting. Just sitting right below -12 here. Anywhere in that area is a nice, healthy level that you can that you can push into your virtual guitar amplifier. -12 is always kind of the magic number for me. There's nothing magic about -12. It's just a nice place right in the middle of the meter here that we have enough headroom above and that we're not too quiet sitting down at like -24 or anything. That's tip number 1, healthy level going into your virtual amplifier. Tip number 2 is to pull back the bass dial on your virtual amplifier to get rid of or reduce that kind of fake digital sounding low end that you get from virtual amplifiers. It helps the guitar sound more realistic coming out of the amplifier, and it helps emphasize the character and vibe from the virtual amplifier without the muddy low end getting in the way. So moving on here to tip number 3, let's finish sculpting our guitar tone and we'll move in. That sounded pretty good to me there, tone-wise. A little extra tip, I always like to level balance the volume in and out of the amplifier, just so I make sure we're not going too overboard with the volume afterwards. But it's nice that we set our level going into the amplifier at a nice conservative level here, so that if we do get some extra gain or volume from the virtual amplifier, we're not up towards zero here or clipping or anything like that. So tip number 3 for working with digital or virtual amplifiers is to save a copy of the DI. So you saw when we started here, I actually used the layers function here inside of Studio One to save the actual DI signal before I bounce it through the amp. So I don't leave the amps on while I'm mixing. Once I've finished with the recording session, I bounce all the guitars through the amplifiers, so it's like we recorded right through the amplifier, right? I don't have a bunch of virtual amplifier plugins going across all my guitars, especially on a song like this. You see there's a lot of guitars. Running all those virtual amplifiers through my mixing session would take a lot of CPU power. It would really lag out any DAW, especially if your computer is not very, very powerful. High quality virtual amplifiers take a lot of CPU energy, so be conservative and bounce your guitars through your plugins. But the third tip here, without getting way off the beaten path here, is to save a copy of your DI before you bounce. So all I do here in Studio One, I right click, go to layers, duplicate layer, and then I have a copy here. I usually call it OG, so original. This is the original raw guitar, the raw DI signal without the amp being printed on it. And then I can always push it back up if I need it. So if I get into the mix and I'm not really liking that guitar tone, maybe I went too far with the amplifier, I can always pull up the original DI here and everything is nice, it's good, we're not going to mess with anything. So it's always good to have that to get back to. And then what you do, right, once we're done, so if we pull up that duplicated layer, then all you have to do here is if we open up our inspector window, you can highlight, merge your track together, bounce it so it's one file here, and then all you have to do is enable your event effects, and we can pull our amp plugin down to the event effects and bounce it to our track. That way we have the actual amplifier printed to our track, and then we can disable if we want to save this plugin up here, or we can actually remove it so it's not taking up any CPU energy or hogging CPU energy on our actual computer. So those are our 3 tips there. Tip number 1 is to set a conservative level, but make sure you have enough volume going into your actual virtual amplifier. So set a healthy level going into your virtual amplifier. Tip number 2 was on the actual amp plugin, pull back that bass knob a little bit so you're reducing some of that digital or fake sounding low end. So you can see we pulled back our bass knob here. Helps the guitar sound more realistic without it having that big muddy low end. And then tip number 3 was to save a copy of the actual DI signal in case you need to get back to it later. So if you find you went a little bit too far with your amp settings, or you're not happy with the amplifier settings that you got when it comes mix time, you can always pull up your original DI and tweak it from there. Rebounce it through the amplifier, put on a different amplifier, different cab, and tweak your tone that way. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're ready to take your mixes to the next level and really start dialing in your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.